This podcast is part of the Everyday Heroes Podcast Network, the network for first responders and those who support them.
All right, and welcome back to another Scissors and Scrubs episode. Not such a cheerful one.
No.
So it looks like back in January of this year, we got an email. So I don't want this woman to think we forgot about her. And this is an email from Michelle, and it says, "Hi, ladies. The other day I was doing a crossword puzzle with a coworker in Hiroshima and Nagasaki came up. I realized that I know nothing about it. We quickly looked it up, and it's shocking how many people died and the after effects it had on their health. We also found this site," which she proceeds to give us a site on what the information is. "It gives a little of the medical aspect of the bombing. Anyway, just wanted to pass that along in case you could use it. Keep up the great work, Michelle." Well, Michelle, the reason we waited so long is because the bombings happened in August.
Yes.
So we figured it would be a great way to close out our summer series with this horrible tragedy that happened the first week of August.
This terrible, terrible information.
Yes, it was, I will say it was very interesting, and I'll just get into it later. It was interesting. There's a lot of posturing, but sometimes you think it had to be done. I still am very conflicted. You know, if you talk to my mother, my mother was a child during World War I.
Yeah.
Two. World War I, she'd be like 1,000 years old. She's 1,000 years old. So during World War II, she was born in 1939, so she was a child, but my uncle was in World War II. It was dragging on. I'll get into a quick timeline of what was going on. But up until today, if you say to my mother, "Oh, Hiroshima was horrible," she'll be like, "Well, they bombed Pearl Harbor." Well, I think 2,200 people died in Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
And if you tack on Pearl Harbor and all the people who died in POWs, more people died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which I had to actually pull up the numbers and show her because she did not believe me. And her chant will always be, "Well, they attacked us at Pearl Harbor." Neither one was correct.
Right.
But we inflicted a significant amount of more damage.
Yes.
Significant.
Yeah.
So I am going to kind of give us like a history lesson.
Okay.
And Laura's going to give you the medical lesson.
Next episode.
Yes. And we're going to just dive right into it because there's a lot of information to cover. All right. We can talk all of our bullshit later. All right. So the Truman Library, History.com, Wikipedia, Naval History, and Heritage Command is where most of my information came from. And somewhere else on the internet. All right. Picture it. 1939. Yeah. Hitler, Mussolini, they're plowing their way through Europe. Yep. They have taken over every square inch, except for Russia, of Europe, which I think Russia's Asia anyway. They are at the seas of the Atlantic. Next stop, United States. The U.S. has not entered the war in 1939. And you almost go back to 1938. The Einstein, it's all a lot of weird names, like German names. Zillid, S-Z.
Okay.
Zillid. Letter is written by Leo Szilard and Eugene White, and it's signed by Albert Einstein.
Oh.
It is delivered to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was president at the time. It warns the U.S. of the development of an extremely powerful new bomb type, and it urges the U.S. to start stockpiling uranium ore and to accelerate the research of nuclear chain reactions, because at this time, a couple of scientists have discovered nuclear fission. Part of the reason Germany is always lacking behind all of this science is because he hated the Jews.
Yes.
Most of these scientists were Jewish. They all emigrated to the United States, which is why we got the bomb first. It kind of backfired for him. So 1939 kicks off the beginning of the Manhattan Project and a race against time. The Manhattan Project is headed by Enrico Fermi and Leo Szilard, who are the two that really kind of were into this whole nuclear fission business. All right. 1941. December 7th, day that will live in infamy. Pearl Harbor's hit.
Yes.
It brings rapidly, instantaneously, the United States enters World War II. Battle cry of every American all over is remember Pearl Harbor. That's how they justified anything. You know, bombing of Dresden, which was terrible. All these terrible things. It's war. I'm not judging, but that was the cry. Remember Pearl Harbor. They got us. So, April of 1945. Now, we have been fighting for, 4 years?
Yeah.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt's the only president to have done 3 terms. He also, shockingly, as we just spoke last week, had polio.
Yeah.
So he dies and succumbs to his illness in 1945, April of 1945. This is significant because the entire time the Manhattan Project is going on and all this research is going on, they would approach him with, when we have the bomb, what are you going to do with it? He had no desire to drop something like that on people. He just couldn't bring himself to do it. Mm-hmm. So when he dies, the vice president, Harry S. Truman, becomes president. Mm-hmm. This is a game changer in the nuclear war. Mm-hmm. May 7th, 1945, Germany surrenders. The U.S. is still at war with Japan. July 16th, 1945. Alamogordo, New Mexico, the first atomic bomb is successfully detonated in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And it's detonated in the desert. This is significant as well. It's flat. Mm-hmm. So you can see the extent of the shock wave. You can see the plume, the mushroom cloud. You can see the damage it causes. Mm-hmm. 2 bombs are developed at this time after they've tested it. One is a uranium-based, the little boy, and the plutonium-based, the fat man. Mm-hmm. July 26th, 1945, at the Potsdam Conference in Germany, U.S. delivers an ultimatum to Japan that you're going to surrender under the terms outlined in the Potsdam Declaration. Mm-hmm. This called, now Japan's government at the time, there's an emperor. It was the only country left with an emperor. Mm-hmm. The emperor had the final say on everything, and the emperor was also the head of the church. So because he's the head of the church, he could manipulate the population, and he could get kamikazes and suicides and all this other stuff. So it caused for the Japanese to form a new democratic and peaceful government, or face prompt destruction. Mm-hmm. Prompt and utter destruction. This would eliminate the emperor, and Japan was like, nope, you're not getting rid of the emperor. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So they're just not surrendering. Yeah. July 26th, 1945, the USS Indianapolis delivers the bomb to Tinian in Japan or Philippines or wherever they would. It had to be Philippines. Yeah, it had to be the Philippines because they weren't in Japan yet. And if you listen, we did a couple, I think at the beginning of the summer, we did the Indianapolis. I wanted to do them back to back, but I think there was a reason we did it in July. Probably, I don't know, but we did it, and it's a horrible story. But
Memorial Day, did we do it?
We did it for Memorial Day. That's exactly what we did it. Okay. So I reiterate that they had an emperor. He's the head of the church and state, the suicide bombers. Okay. So under him, so you got the emperor, then under him you got a bunch of prime ministers, and they're all like royal families also, and they're just controlling everything. So the people are going to blindly follow whatever these people tell them to do. Yeah. So the Japanese are doing literally whatever whether they want to be at war or not, it didn't matter. So they're doing what they're told. So under the emperor is the prime minister Suzuki Kanataro, who was part of the ruling elite. They have lived their way of life and had no intentions of accepting the plans of the Potsdam Conference. Mm-hmm. They instead continue with preparations for a full-scale invasion of Japan. Mm-hmm. Now, I had like 3 uncles in World War II. One of them had been in the Marines, and he was in the Pacific, which when you listen to the fighting in the Pacific versus the fighting in Germany, it seemed, I'm not saying it just seems more vicious, what was going on over there. The jungles and the way they were fighting, and the Japanese just fight differently than the Germans fought. So he was one of the Marines that was on the boats for this invasion, which I'll get into. And he was like, I wasn't coming back. I knew if we weren't coming back. They had predicted ridiculous amount of deaths. And you can see pictures of boats of men just getting ready to go. So what they were hoping is when Russia entered the war, which I think they entered the war at the end of the war, that they would negotiate with them and allow them to keep their way of life. Mm-hmm. Which, if anybody knows anything about Stalin, you couldn't trust anything Stalin said. Mm-hmm. He made a deal with Hitler and he fucked them over, and they made a deal with us and he fucked us over, and he fucked his own people over. Mm-hmm. So the Allied forces and Japan were preparing for a full-scale invasion of Japan. Throughout July, there had been never-ending air raids on Japanese cities. Just bombing. And at the time, they're all wooden rice paper houses.
Mhm.
So they were destroying entire cities. And thousands of people are dying. Over the centuries, many had attempted to invade Japan, and most failed due to the fact that Japan has horrible typhoons.
Yeah.
Horrible, horrible typhoons. So it seems like every time somebody goes into fight in Japan, a typhoon would hit and wipe out half their armies. And the Japanese will fight to the death.
Mm-hmm.
They don't value life the same way Americans do or Europeans do. They will kill themselves to take out as many as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the invasion is called Operation Olympic Game, and it was set for, shockingly again, isn't D-Day? Nope, that's not November, that was June. It's shocked for November 1st, 1945. When you look at history and you go back, a typhoon hit big time on that day.
Oh.
So it's a good thing
Yeah.
the invasion didn't happen. So it's summertime, 1945. Japan has 4 million men. Half are stuck in China and Manchuria due to the United States submarines, which my son's going to be on, naval blockade keeping them in China. And the U.S. is planning this massive invasion. The invasion would start on the island of Kyushu. The Japanese knew that's the only place they could invade, and they knew the plan before we even really had the plan.
Yeah.
And the goal of the Japanese, they didn't ever plan to win. They just wanted to demoralize the United States as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So their goal was to destroy as many Americans as possible before they surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
They figured if they demoralized the United States, that all we would want was to surrender at any cost. That would give them whatever they wanted just to surrender. They wanted to break the will of the American people, so the negotiations would end up, they didn't want us occupying Japan, which is exactly what happened. The defense plan had 3 basic principles of how to defeat the United States. 1, God, my writing. What did I write? Positions should be constructed beyond the effective range of enemy naval bombardment. So what the Navy usually does, the first thing they do is they pull up with their big fucking battleships and they bomb the shit out of the beaches. And they had watched what happened at Normandy, and they were preparing for that kind of an invasion. So they wanted to make sure that wherever you dug in was out of the guns' ranges. Number 2, cave-type positions should be constructed for protection against air raids and naval bombardment. And number 3, inaccessibly high ground should be selected as protection against flame-throwing tanks. And if you see any footage from Iwo Jima, that was another big battle the Marines had. The beaches, because it's like Hawaii, their beaches are like sheer cliffs because of the waves. So trying to it's not like Normandy. Trying to storm these beaches, almost impossible. The harbor was lined with submarines, and some subs, they carried little tiny subs, man-subbed, that were suicide subs. So 2 or 4 men would be in these subs. They'd launch them. They'd paddle over to these boats and blow themselves up. Like, how do you fight this?
I don't know.
They also plan to use all of their destroyer ships as suicide ships on the U.S. amphibious vehicles. So when the military is invading, and you've seen it a lot, they have, in fact, Mike's father was on a ship that would have these. They have these big amphibious, almost like duck boats. That's what duck boats actually were. And they would launch them into the water full of troops. They'd land them on the beach. So these destroyer ships that they knew were no good anymore, they would load the bows with a ton of explosives and run into these things. This was their plan. They hadn't done it. They were going to explode all of these and kill as many as they could. They had over 3,000 small suicide boats.
My God.
They had suicide frogmen. What's a suicide frogman?
I don't know that I want to know.
That's somebody who puts on scuba gear, lines himself full of bombs, swims to the top as close to these amphibious vehicles as they can, and blows themselves up.
Oh my God.
There was 4,000 of them. Japan was preparing for the fight of a lifetime. And it was predicted that there would be about 1 million soldiers dead on both sides.
Oh my God.
So this is what's brought to Truman. Here's the plan.
Right.
This is the prediction of how many men are going to die. And we don't even know we're going to be successful because they've got underground tunnel systems. They're trenched in. And Truman's like, fuck. All right. So he has to decide, is this going to be the end of the war with the bombs? Or are we going to fight? What kind of destruction are we going to have? Blah, 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 blah. So he decides, all right, let let me see. He's aware that the Japanese people were fighting for the emperor, who was convinced that it was better to die than surrender. You know, you'd see them committing harikari and all this other shit. Women and children are also being trained with any weapons they can on how they're going to kill. Kamikaze pilots are using planes as suicide missiles. Millions of men would die in the invasion, and Truman believed that in the long run, less people would die from the A-bombs than from this invasion in Japan, which in the long run he was correct. Yeah. So throughout the spring, potential cities for the bombs are being investigated. If the city was a potential target, no air raids were put on the city because they want the most damage done possible, which that disturbed me. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. That disturbed me a little bit. Hiroshima's the number one target because of the way it's built. It is built like the desert. So Hiroshima is flat. They knew that the bomb would explode and cause maximum damage. And that's because they also know Russia's watching. And England's watching. Everybody's going to be watching, and they want to flex and show the power the United States has. All right. So Hiroshima's number one target. It had never been subjected to an air raid in the past. It had military forces and factories. It was flat, so the devastation would make it ideal to show the destructive power of the bomb. It was highly populated, great for gathering statistics on the damage that the bomb would cause. Again, another disturbing fact. It also did not have a POW camp in it. Another city was Kokura. That was on the list. Page flip. It was number 2, but on the day that they were looking to go after it, it was cloud covered. So Nagasaki is the other city that they decide to use. It's on the list because the Mitsubishi shipyard is there, and that was making all of their destroyers, all their planes, but it did have a POW camp there. I think it was very hard to find, and I'm sure the Japanese strategically did that.
Placed them everywhere, yeah.
Tokyo was not chosen. Why would you think they didn't choose Tokyo? Never thought this.
I don't know.
It would have killed their entire political structure, so nobody could have surrendered.
Oh my God.
I was like, yeah, I guess that's right.
Sure. Someone probably would have stood up and done it. But...
So now it is August 6th, 1945. The U.S. bomber Enola Gay was loaded up with Little Boy, the uranium-based bomb. These bombs weigh like 10,000 pounds. They're ridiculously heavy. Like, I don't know how the plane could carry up 10,000 pounds.
Right. Nothing else was in it.
And they get into the captains and everything. I just didn't think that was relevant. So if you really want to know that, Michelle, you can go look the captains' names up yourselves, okay? At 8:15, it's dropped on the city of Hiroshima. They didn't put the bomb together on the ground because they were afraid it would explode in flight. So as they're flying over to Hiroshima, they're putting the pieces together to detonate this bomb. Yeah. I mean, could you fucking imagine?
No.
Okay? No. So it's made active while in flight. It falls for 44.4 seconds, and it detonates at a height of 1,968 feet above Hiroshima. They are meant to detonate
in the air.
High. To give you an idea of 1,968 feet, the Freedom Tower in New York is 1,776 feet. So it's
really fucking high.
It's pretty high when it detonates. The initial blast killed 64,000 and injured 69,000. 20,000 of those were Imperial Japanese Army. The blast is a result of X-ray heat, and it sends shock waves in all directions. Almost everything in the mile radius at the point of explosion is completely destroyed. The Hiroshima fireball was 1,200 feet in diameter.
Jesus Christ.
And surfaced temp. So when it dropped and exploded, the temp at the center, 10,830 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh my God.
Which is as hot as the surface of the sun.
Yeah.
So it is so hot that if you were near ground zero, anything near ground zero spontaneously combusted from the heat. And people disintegrated. And there's a very famous part of Hiroshima where there's a shadow left. The man was incinerated and his shadow was burnt into the ground. That's how fucking hot this bomb was. And Japan's like, fuck you, we're not surrendering. And the United States is like, what the fuck are we going to do? So, August 9th, 1945. A B-29 bomber, the boxcar, it leaves from Tinian, and it's going to drop the plutonium bomb, Fat Man, on Nagasaki. Fat Man was actually a more explosive bomb than Hiroshima, but it does less damage because of the way Nagasaki was built. So it drops the bomb at 11:02 in the morning. The bomb was more powerful than the one dropped in Hiroshima, and it fell for 43 seconds, and it exploded at 1,650 feet. Instantly, 35,000 to 40,000 people are immediately killed. That rose to 60 to 80,000 in the following days. They were mostly, the people killed were munitions and industrial workers. That bomb, I think, exploded higher than they wanted to. And Nagasaki was in mountains. Mm-hmm. So when it exploded, the mountains took more of the shockwave than the city, and they really wanted it to spread out. Yeah. August 15th, 1945. Japan finally decides, all right, we've had enough. Their emperor Hirohito, this is the first time that his people had ever heard his voice. He did a radio announcement, and they had never heard his voice. Most of them had never seen him, nothing. Yeah. He announces that Japan has surrendered over the radio. He delivered it in a formal speech in florid Japanese. Oh. September 2nd, 1945, on the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, the official surrender of Japan was signed at 9:04 a.m. Part of the terms were that, there would be a Shinto directive separating their church and state. So you'll no longer... Not that they wouldn't do it again. I don't know. We haven't been at war with them again. Mm-hmm. But you're hoping to eliminate kamikaze and suicides and all that, which we deal with on the other side of the world. Mm-hmm. They would have a parliamentary system of government. The emperor would be purely ceremonial and guarantee certain rights to Japanese people. They do still have an emperor today, and he's like the Queen of England. He's the only person left in the world with the title emperor, and he is there for ceremonial purposes. They went into him. He still gives radio speeches and stuff. It's like the longest running dynasty or something like that. Yeah. My grandfather was a war crimes lawyer in the army. Mm-hmm. In 1945, at 7, my father and his family moved to Japan. Mm-hmm. And it's like fucking decimated after the war. Right. They hated Americans. Fucking hated Americans. Right. So he's like, I would get on the train. And he goes, these trains, they have professional people pushing you onto the train to pack them. Mm-hmm. He goes, you'd have a circle around you. They didn't want anything. They wouldn't come within 10 feet of you. My grandparents lived there until, I think, the 70s. They stayed there. He just stayed practicing law there. He loved it, had a great time. My father came back, went in the Marines. He was like, I'm done. But I can't imagine being an American and growing up in post-war Japan. Right. In 1945. Right. It must have been a blast.
And it's probably the same as Japanese people here.
Yes.
Post-war.
Yes.
You know, like he probably lived the same kind
but the Japanese people here, they were put in internment camps.
No, I'm not saying it's the same. They were obviously free and he had a job, but that hatred he felt is probably the hatred those people felt here.
Absolutely. Yeah. But he could speak fluent Japanese in no time. Yeah. And we have a ton of Japanese shit around the house. That's nice. God bless. Yeah. He has the videos of all of the generals in Hirohito and all those people on trial. It's all in Japanese, so I can't understand a goddamn more of the same. But he's got all of these people. Oh my God. It's pretty impressive, but really boring to watch. Yeah. Okay, so we're stopping here on this episode because it's just, you want to talk about the history and then talk about the medical. Then Laura's medical is intense. So we don't want to stop it halfway and then make you wait 2 weeks. So we're going to stop it here. And we're going to read a couple of emails that came in. Yeah. Because nothing's better than bringing a little lighthearted information right in the middle of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So just picture, we just gave you Hiroshima. This is the 3-day wait. Nagasaki's coming in 2 weeks. Do you want to read the first one?
All right, sure. Okay. I'll go first. All right. This email's from Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. I was going to put the subject header as Wicked Pisser, but I didn't know if it would come through. The summer tips portion of your podcasts are awesome. It actually is somewhat sad to hear people losing their lives to mistakes. Yes,
it is. What did he say the first part was? The what? The summer tips?
Yeah.
Okay.
He says, I was a paramedic in a past life and am still volunteer EMS. Since the late 80s, when I was a paramedic until now, I've definitely seen my share of crap. It has been absolutely disheartening, sometimes gross, sometimes hysterical, but always rewarding. I bet.
Oh, I bet. Yep.
Almost 40 years of doing this stuff. There is one summer danger that you may want to cover, and that is surf casting. Do you know what surf casting is?
I know what it is only because the town I live in, when you walk the beach, there's a jet out.
Mm-hmm.
And at night, all of like there's a whole bunch of people out there fishing for striped bass. Mm-hmm. And I always say to Brian, I don't like walking there. And I'm always like waiting to see who's getting ready to like, so it's when you take the fishing rod and, you throw back and you launch your rod.
Right.
And it's got a nice big hook on. I said, one of these days, we're going to get a fucking hook to the eye or a lip. I wish they would just, I hate it. I'm terrified going by these fucking people.
But they're standing there whipping the lines back and forth over land where people are.
Where people are walking.
Right. All right. So, well, how can surf casting be dangerous, you might ask? Well, it is not dangerous to the surf caster. However, if somebody were to get caught up in the hook after being cast, it can be dangerous. Case in point. Last summer, I was at a local beach, on a weekday. There was always a guy doing surf casting for whatever is running, whether it's stripers, whether it's mackerel, or even bluefish. He always takes caution before he casts. I give that to him. However, one time a woman was walking in his blind spot as he was flinging his arm back to cast out. Well, the hook, which was ready for a striper, caught on her bikini top. You might think, so what? The bikini comes off and people get a free show. However, not only did it hook the bikini, but it dug into her breast.
Oh!
And tore her part off. How do I know this? Because the lifeguards had their thumbs up their asses, and I was the one smart enough to put military-grade blood stop powder and use direct pressure, as well as put the flesh that was removed on ice.
Stop for a second. Okay. Where did he get the military blood stop powder? Please tell me he's not sitting on the beach.
Well, he's a paramedic.
Yes, but wasn't he just hanging out at the beach? Like, Andrew, you keeping the shit on you? That's kind of weird.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the lifeguards had it and didn't know what to do with it. Okay, let's just go with that. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know that he had it just on.
I'm hoping.
Person.
Well, I used to be an EMT, and what some of them had in their cars was a little scary.
And he took the flesh that was removed and put it on ice. In any event, this is definitely not meant to be funny, but just something else that you might want to put in your podcast.
Could you fucking imagine?
And he said, "Keep up the great work, and don't forget the PBR towels at the Packy." Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Horrifying.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm always like, oh, Brian, I think we should walk another way. I'm going to get one to I'm more worried about it in my eye, or in my.
I might rather it there than
because it's barbed. Once it's in, I mean, they're going to rip out.
Off.
Yes, they're gonna rip. Oh, that guy must have shit when he's like, oh, what did I just?
Oh my God, no, the poor thing. He must have died.
Oh, all right. This is from Jessie. Hello, my lovelies. Hi. I finally caught up and heard your plea for anyone to reach out and say hi. So, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Jess. Hope you two are doing well and not having too brutal of a summer. I feel like I live in Arizona. It's hot as balls here in Vegas, and honestly, it's hot as balls here too.
Yes.
I'm freaking over it. You know what it also is? Fucking humid and rainy and sticky. The rainy is nice. We definitely need it. But the humidity that precedes and follows is for the birds. Well, we haven't even had the fucking rain.
No, we've had like zero rain.
We look like we live in Vegas. Yeah. The grass is burnt. Everything's burnt.
I'm just going to put sand down for next
year. Of all years to have put sod down, I picked the year we have no fucking
really
rain.
Not a good one.
Mm-hmm. Brian's out there constantly. This weather also brings flooding, which out there because it's so desert.
Yeah.
Yep. Why does flooding bring? Idiots. It brings the idiots out in droves. It's like these people lose whatever 3 damn brain cells they have left when the weather falls from the sky. They forget how to drive. They forget how to dress. They forget their own damn cars are not boats. I believe you 100%. We got a dump of 2-ish inches in about 30 minutes the other day, and I shit you not, 15 to 20 cars stuck in flooded intersections. 3 or 4 I understand, but 20? Why would you continue to drive through it if you see people floating by? People may make no sense. I can totally, people are idiots. People are fucking idiots.
I've seen people do that, go into a wicked deep puddle in their car stalls, and another person
comes right behind them.
Goes right behind them. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why is your car better than
they
their
clear,
car?
like you can see.
Right.
Anyway, I adore you both. You seemed rather lonely, so figured I'd drop you a line and say howdy and congrats on being TikTok famous. Pray for me and the influx of the morons, Jess. Oh, I pray for you. And thank you for listening. And thank you for writing our TikTok famous. Just huge. God. What was I was just watching a TikTok, speaking of it. And these people got stuck in the rain on the highway in their car next to, I don't know if it was the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team. I don't know who they were. Literally 8 Marines in dress blues get out. God bless them. They're in thigh-high water,
Ugh.
pushed their car out of the rain, and she's filming. She's like, the Marines came to rescue. I'm like, Jesus Christ, why didn't that happen to me
I know,
when I
what
was
kind
younger?
of luck did you
I would
have?
never have gotten that. I had my car flood. No fucking Marines helped me come
No, you were
out.
pushing
I was
your own gun.
throwing my cans out to save my life. Nothing. I had a couple of nice kids who helped me in college, but no Marines. I would have liked the Marines to come out.
It would have been nice.
All right.
And then we have this message on Facebook from Emmett. He says, "Hi, just started listening to your podcast. Whale Tales was the first one I heard, and holy shit show. I drove home after a graveyard. I'm a crane and heavy equipment operator in and around Boston. Shout out to IUOE Local 4.
Oh, go Local 4.
Mm-hmm. He was driving home from a graveyard shift and immediately went home and watched Blackfish on Prime.
Oh,
watch
God.
it. It's sad.
It's awful. We shouldn't have talked about that because I did finally watch that.
I know, it's terrible, but it's you just can't help it. I've had a lot of nurses and other medical industry employees in my family. I've heard many horror stories, but your podcast is a fresh new take, and I think I'm addicted. LOL. Love hearing the local accent too. Yeah. That's the way we really talk. Wouldn't be a proper message without busting some chops. So here's my only gripe.
Here it comes.
Here it comes. I just wish you'd bring the sound up on your end when you record audio. I turn my truck volume all the way up and still can't make out some of what you say, and blow my eardrums out when I switch back to WBZ. I do this.
Well, you could have heard us in WBZ.
Yeah. Well, if you listen to WBZ, you would have heard us. Yeah. Keep up the great work, Nicole and Laura, and not to be forgotten, Mike. Wow.
Mike!
Looking forward to enjoying many more of your podcasts, hopefully at a better sound level. All the best, and thank you for what you do in the hospitals and on the airwaves.
All right, Emmett, we try. We've tried every trick. I am literally... Okay, I'm deep throating the mic right now,
God.
and it still isn't loud enough. All right? I can't even hear myself, and I get aggravated. I get everything. I don't know why. It just is what it is. We've tried. So we're doing our best. But I love that you guys are all listening. Get the rest of your local boys to listen. Yeah. I'm sure if he digs deep, there's some stories from the work sites that week. We should probably do fucking work site accidents.
Shit, yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's been quite a few in Boston recently. And I want to get back to the EMT guy, Andrew.
Oh.
We will take EMT stories all day long because you all have a ton of them. I know it.
Yeah. Horror stories.
Yeah. So have your friends write in or whatever. I mean, you've got to have some good stories.
Yeah.
We love hearing our emails. We got a couple. We got one from somebody we used to work with who we adore. Like, I love this guy. I went to a Jimmy Buffett concert. He was there. I was like, oh my God, what's up? How you doing?
He was just always so... It was just always so nice when he came down the desk. Hi, Laura, how are you? Every time he saw you, even if you didn't see him for months, hi, Laura, how are you?
You know, this sounds weird when you're not doing... When somebody knows your name in our job, it means a lot because you took the time to remember it. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many times you work with somebody, like some of these doctors and stuff, they don't remember your name because they don't really care. He always remembered your name. And he was sweet and pleasant and wonderful. And I didn't even know he had left.
I did know.
And I'm even more devastated now that I know he left.
Yeah.
So we love you.
And it was very nice to hear from you.
And if you come back up, we should get you a drink too.
Yes.
So we did have a couple of other emails come in, but we didn't want to bore you too much. We got a ton of emails with suggestions about the podcast. Some of them were stuff we just couldn't really cover. We appreciate the write-ins, but some of them we were like, I don't know if we could cover that because it's just we either already covered it or it was something that really wouldn't fit into the podcast. Mm-hmm. But we will still take suggestions because, like I said, the Hiroshima Nagasaki episode somebody started and gave us, and I was like, that's kind of a good idea. And just listening to Emmett, we should cover worksite injuries. Oh,
and then did you guys see? This brings us back to another old episode. Did you see how they made the movie about the 5 days in?
I heard they were making one, but I didn't see it. 5 Days in Memorial.
5 Days at Memorial.
On what?
Oh shit!
So that was
Apple TV, I think.
Oh, I don't get Apple TV. That's our Katrina episode.
Yes. So if you're interested in that or saw that,
we cover the
ads for that. We cover that story. It was really good. I really like that episode. But definitely listen and then watch the movie. Well,
don't watch the movies Laura recommends because Blackfish was so disturbing. I had to take a sleeping pill to go to bed. And it was about orca whales, and I was devastated.
It was.
I literally was texting you, and I'm like, Laura, I don't know if I can watch this. She's like, you literally watched the video of a 14-year-old boy being ejected from a ride. I'm like, but that's different. These orcas didn't ask to be captured.
Well, he didn't ask.
He got on the ride. He designed a good It was horrible.
It was.
It was horrible.
I know, but it's really good.
It was excellent.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I never went to SeaWorld. I am so glad I never went to SeaWorld. Those fuckers. That's all I can say about SeaWorld.
I enjoyed it while
Lying
I was there.
sacks
It was
of
terrible.
shit.
I feel terrible now, but it was good. And Lenny, watch it with Katie, please. Thank you.
It was devastating. Devastating to watch. Brian watched it with me. He's like, this is really disturbing. I'm like, yes, I know. I know. All right, so part 2 of Hiroshima Nagasaki is coming up. Laura's got some very great stuff coming up. The great story, not great stories, interesting stories, because it's not great what happened.
No, it's terrible.
It was a devastating experience, and let's just hope we never see a war like that again.
Ever.
All right, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye. Like, subscribe, rate, and review the Scissors and Scrubs podcast on whatever podcast app you listen to us on. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Scissors and Scrubs. And email us any of your stories or thoughts to scissorsnscrubs@gmail.com.